Raila Odinga exposes General Museveni in South Sudan. Earlier today, on an eager mission, I had a detailed and fruitful discussion with my brother, His Excellency President Salva Kiir in Juba, South Sudan, regarding the political situation in the country. I'm encouraged by the possibility of a resolution to the conflict. I will be briefing other regional leaders and President William Ruto on my mission and a possible roadmap to sustainable peace and stability. This is the guy, Raila Amolo Odinga, went to South Sudan. And when he wanted to speak to the vice president of this one, who is under house arrest, this Salva Kiir told him, no, you will not do that. Go to Uganda, go to Kampala, and first get a permission from General Yoweri Kaguta Museveni. If Museveni permits you to do so, then come back and see that gentleman. Then Raila Amolo Odinga came to Uganda to see General Museveni on matters of South Sudan. Why is he the key pivotal here? Why is the common figure here, General Museveni? That even the president of South Sudan can't give me a real way to go and talk to the guy who has been his vice president, prime minister, vice president. But he was sacked. Yeah. And you have to come to Uganda or to go to Uganda, and then General Museveni gives you a leeway to go and talk to the other guy. Then the guy came to Uganda, later came to Uganda, and they said this, landed in Entebbe, Uganda, for a briefing session with His Excellency President Yoweri Museveni following my first finding mission on the political situation in South Sudan. I remain hopeful that a peaceful way out of the political uncertainty in South Sudan is possible and further escalation can be avoided. That's an exposure. That whatever is happening in South Sudan, Museveni knows. Museveni is behind it. Museveni is the guy behind all what's going on in South Sudan. Let's first watch this video. It will tell you the reality.
The situation in South Sudan as we speak remains worrying, volatile, and unpredictable as the first vice president of this country remains under home arrest. Remember, a few days ago, it was reported that over 20 armored vehicles escorted by the Minister of Security bombarded the premises of Dr. Riek Machar and put him under house arrest together with his wife. Now, they are still under this house arrest, and the government of South Sudan says that putting Dr. Riek Machar under house arrest is a preemptive measure where they understand that he has the influence and the support to start something unpleasant for the country.
Now, if you too believe Riek Machar has the support of the masses, meaning you also don't believe in yourself,
of South Sudan, but also as they carry out their day-to-day investigations to understand if he was indeed in coordination of the soldiers, the rebels that killed 10 people in the Upper Nile. So he is under custody at his home under the care of the forces of South Sudan. Political analysts are worried of what could come out of his arrest, much as the government of South Sudan believes that putting him under house arrest would help avert what would have come out of him being outside, being free to mobilize, rather than, being under house arrest. However, revealers or commentators believe that indeed, instead, putting him under house arrest could stir more violence, like we saw back in 2013, where about 400,000 people lost their lives and millions of South Sudanese, and not only South Sudanese by the way, but even people from the neighboring countries that were working in South Sudan, were displaced, others killed, like we said. So they are all measures to try and control the situation before it can escalate. And remember, at the very beginning of this misunderstanding between the government of Riek Machar and his very first vice president, the first vice president, Dr. Riek Machar, Salva Kiir the president, Dr. Riek Machar the first vice president, led to the deployment of UPDF, to be specific SFC, in Juba to help restore normalcy and control what could come out of this situation. So it has been under control for some time, much as there's been a little bit of reports of fighting, especially in the Upper Nile, between the government forces but also the white army, who are the rebels that pay their allegiance to Dr. Riek Machar. So the situation is really not good. It is volatile, that it can erupt into anything anytime X. And as a result of this, we've seen the chairman of the East African Community in office, Dr. William Ruto, sending an envoy sending an envoy to South Sudan, Odinga Raila, to be able to get to understand the root cause of the problem and what can be done to salvage the situation. However, to his surprise, to Raila Odinga's surprise, when he reached in South Sudan, he was not allowed to visit or talk to Dr. Riek Machar. Instead, the president of South Sudan, Salva Kiir, after giving him a nice reception, he only referred him to President Yoweri Museveni. And this was it. He told him, if you want anything to do with Riek Machar and the situation in South Sudan, to understand it fully, please go to Kampala and speak to Yoweri Museveni. And this is where, we derive our working title today. Kenya's Raila Odinga discovers the kingpin of East Africa after Salva Kiir told him to consult Museveni on the matters to do with South Sudan. Wow. This is interesting. Okay?
Yeah, interesting.
Because it gives us insights on a number of things. One, we get to understand that.
And this really raises a lot of questions. Why? Why, if I want to visit the first vice president of South Sudan, instead of going there or asking the president of the country, South Sudan, and he permits me to go there, bro, I have to go to the neighboring country and ask the president of that country to give me the permission to visit the first vice president of another country, in another country. That is Africa.
I like what President Yoweri Museveni said at one point, that, look, I am carrying all the burden of South Sudan because I know their problems. I was part of, them trying, when they were trying to get their independence. I've carried a lot of their issues, their problems. Therefore, if there is anyone who could bring or try to bring a solution to the problem in South Sudan, it should be me, not the Europeans. He was, addressing a congregation at one point, and he said something in that direction. So it makes you understand who is really in control of East African matters, by putting aside all the ego and everything. But also, it shows you that Dr. William Ruto could not let go of the situation that would make him seem not part and parcel of it, but also looking more like weak, okay? Because President Museveni was taking all the stardom in the situation in South Sudan, first of all, by deploying SFC fast in there, and also being, more like a go-between, up to the point of, his envoy, Ruto's envoy, being referenced to Museveni. It shows really that there was an element of, I cannot be left behind. I need my footprint also in South Sudan. That's something that I read between the lines in the situation of Dr. William Ruto in regards to South Sudan and sending his envoy, Raila Odinga, in there to discuss. So he says that they had had a previous chat with Museveni about the situation in South Sudan, and at the point of sending there an envoy, there was a direction, but instead they were referenced back to Museveni. That's very, very interesting and really has a lot to read between the lines. To understand that who is the big fish in this region, and with...
Yes, we must know, and everyone must believe that the old man with the heart, General Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, is now the father of Africa, the father of East Africa, the big fish. You must respect him whether you want or not, and you must seek knowledge from him whether you want or not. He will force you to do that. Africa independent. We have independent countries. But it's okay to have an old man somewhere where you go for encouragement, where you go for some guidance, as General Museveni is doing. Yeah.
No doubt, it tells you that President Museveni is the kingmaker, is the kingpin of the region, and that's why he has to be consulted on the situation happening in a foreign country, in a country that has a government, but they have to first consult Museveni. That's very interesting. Now, there is a very, very interesting article written in the Kenyan or Kenyans.co.uk publication that very well explains why why Raila Odinga was in South Sudan and how he was, bounced back to Kampala to discuss with Museveni, and we're going to read it and understand a few things here and there. But to me, it's a sheer display of who the kingpin, the kingmaker of East Africa is, and we shall discuss that at the end. So the reports indicate that President of Kenya, William Ruto, dispatched Raila Odinga as an envoy on a mission that was meant to focus on the de-escalation of the situation in South Sudan. Remember, at present, with Dr. William Ruto is the chairman of the East African community, so he is in one way or the other responsible to be able to ensure that the escalation of the situation in South Sudan.
Now, hear this. The chairman of the East African community never knew on the deployment of UPDF in South Sudan. Never knew about that. Now, what chairmanship is he?
Happens. However, the presence of, or the mission on which Raila Odinga was on in South Sudan leaves questions of what he appears to be now in the politics of East Africa, but also in Kenya. But that's not what brought us today. We are looking at why he was in South Sudan and what happened. So according to Dr. William Ruto, he had already engaged Salva Kiir on phone on the polarization, on polarizing the situation in the war-ravaged country of South Sudan. And they quote, I had a call with President Salva Kiir, that is, Dr. William Ruto, on the situation leading to the arrest and detention of the first Vice President, Riek Machar, in South Sudan, Ruto said, adding, after consultations with President Abiy, I'm sending a special envoy to South Sudan to engage to try and de-escalate and brief us back. The African Union chairperson Mohamed Al Yusuf also said that they will deploy the AU panel of the WISE, which is chaired by retired Justice Ofi Owul, Kenya's first female state council senior magistrate, high court judge, and appeals court judge. Okay, so being the chairman of the East African community, he had to ensure that his presence as a chairman is also felt in the situation in, South Sudan. But there are undertones here that I want you people to look at. One, Dr. William Ruto in this situation cannot let Yoweri Museveni, dominate the situation. First of all, just take it with a pinch of salt, but there is some iota in it. When the SFC deployed in South Sudan, basically, they said they deployed at the invitation of Dr. Salva Kiir. Now, the question is, why was the KDF not the one invited? Okay? But also, when you look at things, there is also the fight to have the stardom by yourself. Everyone is trying to show how powerful and might they can be. And therefore, Dr. William Ruto could not just let things slide when he sees that Yoweri Museveni was taking all the credit. So this is a personal opinion, please don't roast me. He used that opportunity of being the chairman of the East African community to stamp authority in South Sudan through Raila Odinga. So when Odinga reached South Sudan, of course, he was welcomed by Salva Kiir. They had a conversation. But when it came to meeting Dr. Riek Machar at his premise or where he is being detained, he was told, no, that cannot happen.
Why? I'm here for a peace mission. If you are on a peace mission, you must talk to both sides. You must know the side A and side B. You must know why are in this, and you tell them why it is not okay. What the solution? What should be done? Now, if I can only meet you and another one I can't meet, bro.
Instead, he was directed to go to Uganda and meet President Yoweri Museveni, probably to be given permission to be able to speak to Riek Machar. So this leaves you wondering in which capacities, and I want you to feel the answer by yourselves.
Yeah.
In which capacities now is President Yoweri Museveni standing? To an extent that a president of a foreign country, a sovereign country in this matter, makes him as a reference of another envoy from a country where the chairman of the community comes for consultation about or if he should be able to meet, the first vice president that is in prison. That tells you a lot. Okay, so the reports indicate that indeed Raila Odinga traveled to Uganda and met with President Museveni, and they had a conversation about this issue.
Yes.
But remember, we just read up that Dr. William Ruto had a conversation with President Yoweri Museveni and other leaders before sending his envoy to South Sudan. But it's shocking that Instead, when they reached, or when Raila Odinga reached South Sudan, he was referred back to Uganda to meet Yoweri Museveni. That speaks volumes.
Yeah.
Whether you like it or not, it places some particular president at a higher level compared to the rest, at least in the situation in South Sudan. And remember, in one of the interviews, there's somewhere Museveni is discussing and says, he was making reference to some Europeans, where he said, I am literally shouldering all the pain, all the problems of South Sudan. I know how it came into existence. I know the challenges that it has been through, and we've been trying as East Africa to ensure that we bring normalcy in South Sudan. And therefore, no European should be teaching me on what should be happening in South Sudan, or trying to say that they have a solution for South Sudan that we don't have as members of the East African community, especially as President Museveni. So that was a very, very big statement as well. So when you put it together with this situation where Raila Odinga was deported to Uganda to speak to Yoweri Museveni on an issue of first president incarcerated in South Sudan, speaks volumes. I'm sorry for laughing, but there's something to pick out of that.
Yeah.
And let's look at another interesting article in the Kenyan co.ke, a publication in Kenya, and what it says about that situation. They have an interesting working title. Raila Odinga claims South Sudan denied him access to arrested Riek Machar and was told to instead visit Museveni. Why? Okay, we will get to understand. Former Prime Minister Raila Odinga has expressed displeasure after the South Sudanese government denied him access to talk to the country's first Vice President, Riek Machar, who is currently under detention. Odinga, who addressed the press on Saturday afternoon, said he held talks with South Sudan's President Salva Kiir, who explained to him why Riek Machar was arrested. According to Kenya's special envoy to South Sudan, Kiir informed him that Machar was arrested after a military chief succumbed, and then 10 others in the state of Nasir, which is located in the upper Nile. However, Odinga's attempt to talk to Machar, who is currently under house arrest, proved futile as the South Sudanese government denied him entry to Machar's detention center. The former prime minister was informed that he could not access Machar because of the ongoing investigations into the alleged murder crimes in the upper Nile. Okay? Remember, they were putting cases of the 10 deceased soldiers, who include the general that happened in Nasir in the upper Nile, on him. I had a lengthy discussion. Now, this is Raila Odinga speaking. I had a lengthy discussion with President Kiir, who told me about the challenges they are facing, and that there was the killing of a general that we talked about above, and 10 other people in the town of Nasir in the upper Nile. And this is what they are investing about, Raila revealed. Because of this, he continues, he said that Vice President Riek Machar had been put under house arrest as they continue with their investigations. I asked to talk to Machar, but they denied me the chance. Hours after the meeting with Salva Kiir, Odinga traveled to Entebbe in Uganda, where he met President Yoweri Museveni. During the meeting in Uganda, the former prime minister informed Museveni about the unfolding events in South Sudan. While calling for a quick resolution to the issue, Odinga urged the international communities, including the United Nations, to intervene. That is where my problem is. What is the United Nations going to do? What does it have to do with the situation in South Sudan that African Union, East African community doesn't have?
Yeah.
So this is wrong if he ever, thought about it. Raila Odinga. However, we continue. They had not made a direct connection with him and the killing, but we hope that they are going to finalize this matter as quick as possible. They said that when I go back to Juba, they will allow me to meet with Riek Machar. Of course, that is not possible. Machar, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so here is Raila Odinga being referred to President Yoweri Museveni for anything to do with the arrest of Riek Machar and probably the situation in South Sudan. So what does this show you? It shows you who the kingpin of East Africa, especially in the matter of South Sudan, is. Remember, I just told you that SFC under, okay, of course, it's a body that works in tandem with the Uganda People's Defense Forces, deployed in Juba at the beginning of this whole situation to ensure that the situation does not get out of hand. Now you are being referred as an envoy. You're being referred to President Museveni. Shows you the magnitude of his influence, his might, his strength in the politics of East Africa. Especially a country that he calls his own, not in terms that, you know, this is my country, no, but in terms of what he has been able to do for them, for peace to reign. So it is something that you should pick, that I picked as well, that look, there is a pin, there is a kingpin, a kingmaker in East Africa, and that is Museveni. Undoubtedly. Undoubtedly. There is nothing you can do without his consent. And then there was politics at play where also William Ruto wanted to be part of whatever is happening and could not sit and see Museveni taking all the stardom in the situation in South Sudan, being the run-to person when he's silent as the chairman of the East African community. So that's why I think he sent Raila Odinga to mediate of some sort or to study the situation of some sort, only to be embarrassed and told, go and speak to Museveni in Kampala before you can access Riek Machar. So go down to our comment sections and share your opinion if you think that was the direct translation of what happened, what transpired to Dr. Riek Machar. Comment, like, share.
Yeah. Thanks, Brad. Kali. Let's everyone ask himself, why should I go to Uganda to ask for permission to go and visit the first vice president of South Sudan, who is in South Sudan? Then I first travel to Uganda, then they give him permission, I travel back to South Sudan to see the first vice president. I love Africa. I love Africa. Listen, Raila Odinga. He said, landed in Entebbe. Bro, this guy is too humble. He's too humble. They told him, you first go to Uganda and ask permission. The guy did it. He came to Uganda. Najja. Tegede. Alabe. Chebamugambi achitukiriza asaba olukusa. Is he trying to show the world that General Museveni is the guy behind all this fracas? That even the president of South Sudan doesn't have the powers. You have to go and look for powers elsewhere. So that to do anything in his country. Landed in Entebbe, Uganda, for a briefing session with His Excellency Museveni, Yoweri, following my finding mission on the political situation in South Sudan. I remain hopeful that a peaceful way out of the political uncertainty in South Sudan is possible and further escalation can be avoided. They told him go to Uganda, the guy went. Oh, this guy is for peace. Now I know. Raila Odinga is for peace. Because this he did, it shows the guy wants peace. The guy wants peace. Earlier today, on an IGAD mission, I had detailed and fruitful discussion with my brother, His Excellency President Salva Kiir in Juba, South Sudan. That was 28th March. Okay. Then, again on 28th March, the guy was in Entebbe. When they told him to go to Uganda, the guy just boarded to Uganda.